Welcome back to my channel. We are going to continue with our revision. So far, we have talked about volcanic activities and landforms, impacts of volcanic hazards, plate tectonics, impact of climate change on the Caribbean and the UK, sugar cultivation in Guyana and Brazil, food processing in Singapore and the Caribbean, characteristics of tropical rainforest and latticeous soils, negative and positive impacts of people on the tropical rainforest. And we have also integrated some amount of map reading. Before we move on, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you have not already done so. In this video, we are going to talk some more about weather systems and climate. Now, notice from the map, we are seeing 3 climatic zones. These are the tropical zone, temperate zone, and polar zones. Temperatures in these zones are determined mainly by latitude. Within each zone, there are a number of climates influenced by other factors such as distance from the sea, altitude, and so on. Let's start by looking at the polar zone. The polar zone, which is located between the Arctic and Antarctic circles and the poles, has the coldest temperatures. It is almost always below freezing point. European countries such as Greenland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and Finland all lie within this zone. In North America, 2/5 of Canada as well as Alaska, which belongs to the United States, are both found within this zone. Russia, which is located both in Europe and Asia, also has lands in the polar zone. In the south, Antarctica's landmass lies almost exclusively within the polar zone. There are 2 oceans in the Earth's polar regions. These are the Arctic Ocean in the north and the Southern Ocean in the south. Oceans in the polar regions are a bit different from other oceans on Earth. There's often sea ice at their surface. During the winter months in each hemisphere, the polar regions gain more sea ice as seawater freezes. However, climate change is amplified in the polar regions. These extreme parts of the planet are warming faster than any other area on Earth, with the Arctic Ocean and air temperatures rising twice as much as elsewhere. The total amount of sea ice formed in the winter has been shrinking steadily in recent decades. Sea ice is a critical habitat for a variety of animals, including polar bears, seals, and penguins. In addition to having effects on wildlife, declining sea ice accelerates the rate of ocean warming. This is because sea ice reflects sunlight, providing a buffer to the effects of warmer temperatures. When sea ice is lost and the darker ocean surface is exposed, more heat is absorbed by the sea, increasing the effects of climate change. This is known as the ice albedo feedback. Polar land masses are covered in ice sheets. An ice sheet, also known as a continental glacier, is a mass of ice covering an extensive tract of land for a long period of time. Ice sheets form in areas where snow that falls in the winter does not melt entirely over the summer. As such, over thousands of years, the layers of snow pile up into thick masses of ice, growing thicker and denser as the weight of new snow and ice layers compresses the older layers. Ice sheets are constantly in motion, slowly flowing downhill under their own weight. Near the coast, most of the ice moves through relatively fast moving outlets. As long as an ice sheet accumulates the same mass of snow as it loses to the sea, it will remain in a state of balance. Ice sheets are mainly found in Antarctica and Greenland. Antarctica is the Earth's southernmost continent and is located almost entirely south of the Antarctic Circle. It is surrounded by the Southern Ocean. Antarctica is the coldest place on the planet, with 98% of its surface permanently covered by ice and snow. Greenland is the world's largest island, located between the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans. About 80% of the island is covered in ice. Greenland and, let me repeat, the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets play a very important role in the global climate system. These two bodies of ice are, however, losing net mass to the ocean, mostly through increased melting from the atmosphere as well as the ocean. Along the coast of polar land masses, warm water from beneath rises upwards and undercuts the face of the glacier. Soon, the top has nothing to support it. So pieces of glacier break off, making icebergs. As temperatures increase, more melting occurs, sending more ice into the sea, which causes or contributes to sea level rise. The temperate zone lies between the polar and tropical zone. Unlike the other two zones, it generally has 4 different seasons. Of course, we know these are spring, summer, autumn, and spring. It has moderate temperatures and rainfall. Every continent except Antarctica has at least a small portion of land in the temperate zone. There are 2 main types of temperate climates. These are maritime climate and continental climate. The maritime climate is strongly influenced by the oceans and seas. Since the prevailing winds are westerly in the temperate zones, the western edge of continents in these areas experience most commonly the maritime climate. Now, notice on the map that the UK is closer to the pole than the USA. Yet, many parts of the USA and even Canada have colder winters than the UK. What could be the reason for this? The thing is that the UK is largely influenced by ocean currents. Ocean currents act much like a conveyor belt, transporting warm water and precipitation from the equator towards the poles and cold water from the poles back to the tropics. Thus, ocean currents regulate global climate. The horizontal currents carry water and temperatures. This displaced water affects the air by warming or cooling it, thereby transferring the same effect to the land when the air blows across it. The Gulf Stream is a current system, that is an ocean current system across the Atlantic. Warm water from the Gulf of Mexico and other equatorial destinations rises. As it rises, it flows across the Atlantic towards the UK, passing along the North American East Coast on the way. This warm water warms the air as it passes by. This current in particular affects the climate of the UK. The Gulf Stream and North Atlantic Drift are responsible for the milder winters experienced in the UK compared to the USA. Now, the Gulf Stream is a self-sustaining system as long as the necessary temperatures and salinity gradients exist. But climate change has shifted the balance. Higher temperatures make ocean waters warmer and lighter. An influx of fresh water from melting ice sheets and glaciers also dilutes the water and reduce the density. If these waters are not heavy enough to sink, the entire Gulf Stream will shut down. So this threat of climate change is very concerning to the government of the UK, and therefore it has begun to put in place a number of mitigation strategies. The UK's 2008 Climate Change Act was the first law of its kind in the world and formed the policy base for cutting emissions and preparing for the impact of climate change. Under this act, strategies have been implemented to reform the energy system and decarbonize industry, transport, housing, and heating. These include changing the main energy used for electricity generation from coal and oil to natural gas, nuclear, and renewable energy such as wind. Encouraging transportation fuel suppliers to mix a percentage of biofuel from crops such as wheat with conventional fossil fuel. This mixture, when burned, produces less carbon dioxide. Thirdly, encourage people to buy cars with greater fuel efficiency that run on less petrol by placing taxes on the most polluting vehicles. By rolling out smart meters across the UK households, which help individuals reduce their consumption of energy by increasing the customer's awareness of how much they are using and how much it costs. The government also encourages farmers to use more efficient machinery to spread fertilizer, which in turn reduces the amount of nitrous oxide emitted to the atmosphere. Introducing changes in animal feeds from grass to maize or corn in order to lower the amount of methane gas produced in the stomachs of dairy cows. The government also gives grants to homeowners to make their homes more carbon neutral and to install solar power to heat and light houses. The UK has also been involved in international climate actions. It has played an active part in UN negotiations and contributes climate finance to vulnerable nations. It is a part of a group of countries which help to finance clean tech research and development. It has also been the host of the International Climate Summit in 2021. Continental climates are those which are located far from the sea and ocean, so their temperatures are not moderated by these bodies of water and prevailing wind. Such regions experience colder winters and hot summers, since there is no water body to keep the climate milder in winter and cooler in the summer. Continental climates occur mainly in the northern hemisphere, which has the required large landmass for the climate to develop. The map shows the locations of the main fold mountains of the world. Notice that in North America, the Rockies fold mountain are oriented north to south. This acts as a climate barrier to the mild maritime air blowing from the west. However, if you look over in the continent of Europe, you will notice that the Alps are oriented east to west. This means that maritime climate is better able to penetrate further in this continent. The tropical zone is located between the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. It is generally hot throughout the year because of its closeness to the equator, which experiences the direct rays of the sun for most of the year. As we move further away from the equator, it gets less hot. Like the temperate regions, places closer to the coast have milder temperatures than places inland. Places closest to the equator on lowland experience equatorial climate. These places generally have high temperatures throughout the year, which do not vary much. In fact, the annual range of temperature can be as low as 3 degrees. These places have heavy convectional rainfall throughout the year, with double maxima when the ITCZ is passing south and then returning north. This is therefore the climate in which the tropical rainforest and latticel soils are located. Most Caribbean territories experience a tropical marine climate. This is because most are islands or occupy coastal locations. Other places which experience this climate include the east coast of Australia, northeast coast of Brazil, East Africa, and East Madagascar. The reason we keep repeating the East Coast is because this climate is largely influenced by the trade winds which blow onshore from the east after gathering much moisture from the sea. By the time the winds reach these places, they are very moist because they have gathered moisture from the sea. In areas of high relief, such as the Blue Mountains in the east coast of Jamaica, this brings about relief rainfall. The tropical marine climate experiences a wet and a dry season. These seasons are influenced by the Intertropical Convergence Zone (ITCZ). When the ITCZ is at its furthest position north, the Caribbean is experiencing its wet season. When the ITCZ is at its furthest position south, the Caribbean is experiencing its dry season. The ITCZ is formed as a result of the trade winds converging near the equator. It is responsible for bringing rainfall to the southern Caribbean. So territories such as Grenada, Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, and Suriname are all influenced by the ITCZ. The weather map shows the ITCZ in the southern Caribbean. Notice from the shaded circles that we are seeing that unstable weather conditions are occurring in the south as a result of the ITCZ. Now, this graph is a climate graph of the tropical marine climate. The line graph indicates that temperature does not vary much throughout the year. It is slightly higher in the summer months, which is also the time when we have the most rainfall. Thus, we can talk about a summer maximum. Rainfall is brought on mainly by easterly waves and sometimes hurricanes and other tropical cyclones and disturbances. Easterly waves form within the northeast trade winds. It is a trough and not a cyclone, so the isobars are not closed. Instead, it appears as a bend in the isobars, pointing northwards to the higher values. To the west of the trough, there is stable conditions because of divergence. To the east of the trough, weather is unstable due to convergence. But the trough itself is the most unstable part of the system. Easterly waves sometimes develop into hurricanes, but hurricanes can also develop independently of easterly waves. Hurricanes develop over tropical waters during the summer when temperatures are high. This results in air rising and evaporation occurring. Over time, pressure decreases at the surface, pulling in air from all around. Soon the wind speeds get so strong that they are unable to reach the center, so they spiral upwards, creating a calm center called the eye. The symbol on the weather map over Hispaniola represents the eye of the hurricane. Notice that around the eye, the isobars are circular, they are closed, and this indicates that this system is a cyclone. The cyclonic conditions are the result of the influence of Coriolis force. They are also, that is, the isobars, are also closely spaced, which shows a steep pressure gradient. Notice also that the sky is mostly overcast. This is indicated by the fully shaded circles. Now, hurricanes involve low pressure, strong winds, lightning and thunder, as well as heavy rains. These elements individually or in combination can result in a number of natural disasters. For example, low pressure and or strong winds can cause sea levels to temporarily rise, resulting in storm surge. Storm surge can do great damage to the coast. In hilly areas, the heavy rain can cause landslides along the slopes. This in turn can block roads, displace water in river channels, destroy agricultural crops, and so on. Along lowland areas such as river plains or floodplains, heavy rain may result in flooding. Additionally, strong winds can rip off roofs, uproot trees, damage utility poles, and so on. At the end of a hurricane, people may be injured or even lose their lives. Natural features like forests and coral reefs may be damaged, and many economic problems, such as a general reduction in production, may result. Due to climate change, hurricanes have become even more intense and unpredictable. Now, the climate graph also shows that November to April has low rainfall. This is the dry season. During the dry season, the Caribbean comes under the influence of anticyclones, which brings stable weather. Notice that at this time, temperatures are slightly lower as well. In the northern Caribbean, cold fronts contribute to lower temperatures. Cold fronts also bring some amount of rainfall, so the dry season is not totally dry. Let's talk a little bit about the anticyclone. Anticyclones bring stable weather because they involve air converging in the upper atmosphere and then sinking down. As the air descends, it warms up, causing evaporation of clouds. The higher temperatures also reduce relative humidity, making it difficult for condensation to occur and for more clouds to be formed. With with few or no clouds, there are sunny conditions. Notice from the weather map that the isobars are closed, just like that of the hurricane. This means that the system is cyclonic. However, unlike the hurricane where the winds rotate as they blow into the center, anticyclones involve winds rotating as they blow out from the center. While hurricanes rotate in an anti-clockwise direction in the northern hemisphere, anticyclones rotate in a clockwise direction. Notice also that while the isobars in a hurricane are closely spaced, the isobars in the anticyclones are widely spaced. This means that the winds are light, as there is a gentle pressure gradient. Now, cold fronts. Cold fronts form in the Caribbean when cold and dry air mass from North America, called northers, advance into the Caribbean region, which is dominated by a warm, moist air mass. The cold air undercuts the warm air, forcing it to rise. The replacement of the cold air on the surface lowers the temperatures, while the rising of the moist air brings about unstable weather. As the system moves south, it changes to a quasi-stationary front. This is a front which has little or no motion, but it can also result in instability. The Caribbean has high temperatures throughout the year. This increases the rate of bacterial activity in the soil, the rate which leaves decay to form humus, the rate of seed germination, as well as the rate of plant growth. While heat-loving plants thrive under these conditions, plants which cannot grow at high temperatures are unable to survive in the Caribbean. Some crops, such as wheat, are highly consumed and must therefore be imported. Some plants, like coffee, can grow at high altitudes where temperatures are lower. However, the soil in many hilly areas of the Caribbean are often thin, and the relief is often too rugged to support extensive use of machinery. During the wet season, there may be a soil moisture surplus, requiring the establishment of drainage schemes. A good example of a place which uses a drainage scheme is the coastal area of Guyana, where sugar is grown. These drainage systems can be very expensive. Heavy rains brought about by hurricanes also come with strong winds, which may cause crops like banana to be easily damaged during the storm. Crops have special water requirements. For example, sugarcane requires heavy rainfall in the early growing period, and then long periods of sunshine for the crop to ripen. Cocoa and banana require about 2,000 millimeters of rainfall throughout the year. Corn needs annual rainfall of about 750 millimeters, most of which is required in the growing season. When the water requirement for the growth of these crops is unavailable, farmers have to resort to the use of irrigation to grow their crops. Some irrigation schemes can be expensive. Irrigation can also interrupt the natural flow of water to the sea, and so can deprive plants such as mangroves that grow along the coast of fresh water. Due to climate change, the dry season may extend for a long time, creating drought conditions. During such times, wildfires can easily be started, which can destroy very valuable crops. Furthermore, fires make the land bare. So, when rainfall returns in the next rainy season, soil on hillsides may wash down into rivers, and this may cause flooding. Tourism has been described as the engine of economic growth for the Caribbean region and its biggest foreign exchange earner. In fact, the Caribbean is the most tourism dependent region of the world. In turn, tourism in the Caribbean is a climate dependent industry. Many visitors to the Caribbean are from temperate regions such as the USA, Canada, UK, and other European countries who are attracted to the warm and pleasant climate of the Caribbean. They also enjoy other tropical attractions such as mangroves and coral reefs, as well as the wildlife associated with them. However, as the climate changes, the region must also be in readiness to respond to the resultant changes to the tourism industry. The Caribbean waters, like other water bodies, are experiencing changes. Sea levels are rising due to the melting of ice sheets and sea ice, as well as thermal expansion due to high temperatures. Additionally, the ocean chemistry is likewise changing due to increased amounts of carbon dioxide dissolving into the water, resulting in ocean acidification. Both the higher temperatures as well as the acidification can negatively impact coral reefs. Loss of corals increase the vulnerability of the beach to erosion. When there are strong waves and corals are absent, much erosion can occur. Coral reefs are also central to dive tourism. Okay, as usual, I'm going to leave you with some questions. So go ahead and pause the video and try your best to answer these questions. And of course, if you're unable to answer the questions, you need to go back into the video and then try again. All right, so thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, to share, and to subscribe.